I stared at the ultrasound image on my phone, my hands trembling as I sat in the sterile waiting room of the clinic. The black and white pixels showed a tiny form, barely distinguishable, but unmistakably there. My baby. The baby my ex-boyfriend denied, called a trap, a lie, before he blocked my number and disappeared from my life 3 weeks ago. The tears came hot and fast, and I didn't bother wiping them away. I was alone in this. Completely alone. My parents hadn't spoken to me since I dropped out of grad school to move in with Marcus, and my friends, his friends really, had chosen his side the moment he spun his story about me being crazy and obsessive. I pulled up my messages with shaking fingers, finding the last thread with Marcus, still showing as blocked. But I needed him to know. I needed him to see this child was real, that I wasn't the villain he'd painted me to be. So I did what any desperate, heartbroken woman would do. I tried to text him from a different number. I borrowed my coworker Sarah's phone during my shift at the bookstore, my fingers clumsy as I typed out the message. "This is Emma. I need you to see something." I attached the ultrasound image, my heart hammering as I pressed send. But in my emotional haze, I didn't double-check the number I'd saved in my notes app. I'd been so careful to write it down after he blocked me, getting it from an old email signature. But somewhere between my tear-blurred vision and my shaking hands, I transposed 2 digits. The message delivered. I waited, watching those 3 dots that would indicate he was typing. Nothing came. Hours passed. My shift ended. I went home to my tiny studio apartment in a questionable neighborhood, the kind of place I never imagined living when I was a promising graduate student with a full scholarship. I heated up ramen, the only thing I could afford after paying rent, and tried not to think about the prenatal vitamins the doctor said I needed to buy. My phone buzzed at 9:30 that night. An unknown number. Unknown, who is this? My heart leaped. He'd changed his number too, but he was responding. I grabbed my phone with both hands. "Me, it's Emma. Did you see the picture?" The response came faster this time. "Unknown, I saw it. Where did you get this number?" Something felt off. His tone seemed different, colder somehow, more controlled. But maybe that was just Marcus being Marcus, angry that I'd found a way to reach him. "Me, that doesn't matter. What matters is that you see the baby. Our baby. You can't just pretend this isn't happening." The 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. When the message finally came through, my blood ran cold. "Unknown, I think you have the wrong number. But I'm very interested in this baby you're claiming is mine." "Wrong number. Oh God. Wrong number." I felt the panic rise in my throat like bile. Some stranger now had my ultrasound, my name, my desperate confession. I typed frantically. "Me, I'm so sorry. This was meant for someone else. Please delete that image. I'm so embarrassed." "Unknown, don't be embarrassed, Emma. These things happen. But I have questions. You're pregnant, alone, and the father isn't taking responsibility. Am I understanding correctly?" I should have stopped responding. Every instinct told me to block this number and forget this mortifying mistake. But something about his messages, the way he seemed genuinely concerned rather than creeped out, made me hesitate. "Me, yes. But really, I'm sorry to bother you. I'll leave you alone now." "Unknown. What if I don't want you to leave me alone?" My fingers hovered over the keyboard. What kind of question was that? "Unknown. Here's what I propose, Emma. You need support, clearly. And I find myself in the unusual position of being invested in this situation. Meet me tomorrow. Let's talk about how I can help." "Me help? You're a complete stranger. Why would you want to help me?" "Unknown. Call it a weakness for stories that begin with wrong numbers. Or perhaps I simply don't like the idea of a woman facing this alone. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., Vincenzo's on 5th Avenue. A public place, very safe. Just a conversation." I stared at the message. This was insane. Meeting a stranger who I'd accidentally sent my ultrasound to? But something desperate in me whispered, why not? What did I have to lose? I was already at rock bottom. And Vincenzo's was one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Exclusive, always full, with security. If this stranger could get a table there, maybe he was legitimate. Maybe he really just wanted to help. Me. How will I know it's you? Unknown, you'll know. I'll be the one who can't take his eyes off you. That should have been my red flag. That should have been when I blocked the number and ran. But instead, I felt a flutter in my stomach that had nothing to do with morning sickness. Me okay. 2 p.m. tomorrow. Unknown, good girl. Don't be late, Emma. I hate waiting. I didn't sleep that night. I spent hours trying on the 3 decent dresses I still owned from my old life, finally settling on a navy blue wrap dress that hid my barely there bump and made me look less like a broke, knocked-up 26-year-old and more like someone who belonged in a place like Vincenzo's. The next afternoon, I stood outside the restaurant at 1:55 p.m., my palms sweating despite the autumn chill. The building was all glass and steel, modern and intimidating, with a doorman who looked like he could snap me in half. He opened the door before I could reach for it. "Miss Emma," he asked. I froze. "How did you?" "He's expecting you. 3rd floor, private dining room." Private dining room. Not the main restaurant. Every self-preservation instinct I had screamed at me to turn around and run. But I thought of my empty apartment, my overdrawn bank account, the baby growing inside me that deserved more than I could currently provide. So I stepped inside. The elevator ride felt like an eternity. The doors opened to a hallway with only one door, already slightly ajar. I could hear the clink of glasses, the murmur of a deep voice on the phone. Taking a breath, I pushed the door open. The room was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a table set for 2 with more silverware than I'd seen in months, and a man standing with his back to me, phone pressed to his ear. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders encased in a black suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. His dark hair was perfectly styled, and even from behind, he radiated a kind of power that made the air feel heavy. "I don't care what he wants," the man said into his phone, his voice low and dangerous. "Tell Constantine that if he doesn't have my money by midnight, I'll take payment in other ways. He knows what I mean." He ended the call without waiting for a response and slowly turned around. I forgot how to breathe. He was handsome in a way that felt dangerous, like a blade glinting in moonlight. Sharp cheekbones, a strong jaw with a hint of stubble, and eyes so dark they were almost black. But it was the way he looked at me that made my knees weak, like he was cataloging every detail, seeing through skin and bone to something deeper. "Emma," he said, and my name sounded different in his mouth, almost reverent. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined." "Who are you?" I managed to whisper. He smiled, a slow curve of his lips that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Dante Caruso. Please sit down. We have much to discuss." Dante Caruso. The name triggered something in my memory, something I'd read in the news or heard whispered in the bookstore where I worked. Something about shipping, or was it construction? The details were fuzzy, but the feeling wasn't. This was a man people feared. I should have left. But he pulled out my chair with such old-fashioned courtesy, his hand briefly touching my lower back, and I found myself sitting down. "You're scared," he observed, taking his own seat across from me. "That's smart. But I promise you, Emma, you're safer with me than you've been in a very long time." "Why am I here?" I asked, hating how my voice shook. "Why would you want to meet me over a wrong number?" He poured wine into his glass, then paused, glancing at my stomach. "Water for you, I assume." It wasn't a question. He poured from a crystal pitcher instead, and I noticed his hands, large, strong, with scarred knuckles. Hands that had done damage. "Answer my question," I pressed. Dante leaned back in his chair, studying me with an intensity that made me feel exposed. "Do you believe in fate, Emma?" "No, neither did I. Until last night, when I received a message clearly meant for another man. A man who abandoned you, who denied his own child. And I thought, what kind of man does that? What kind of man leaves a woman like you alone and afraid? You don't know anything about me." "Don't I?" He pulled out his phone, and my stomach dropped as he scrolled through what looked like a background check. "On me. Emma Rose Martinez, 26, former Stanford graduate student studying art history. Dropped out 8 months ago when you moved to the city with Marcus Holloway, venture capitalist, and from what I can tell, complete bastard. You work at Fitzgerald's Books on Amsterdam Avenue, making barely above minimum wage. You live alone in a studio apartment in Washington Heights. Your parents, Miguel and Rosa Martinez, live in San Diego and haven't returned your calls in 6 months. You're 3 months pregnant, give or take, and you have exactly $247 in your checking account. I felt violated, exposed, angry. How dare you? I dare because from the moment I saw that ultrasound, that baby became my concern, he said, and there was something fierce in his voice that made me stop mid-sentence. "And I protect what's mine. That baby isn't yours. Isn't it?" He leaned forward, elbows on the table, and the movement brought him into my space, filling my senses with sandalwood and something darker, like gunpowder. The biological father has relinquished all rights by his absence. He wanted nothing to do with this child. But I do, Emma. I very much do. This is insane, I breathed. You're insane. I'm leaving. I started to stand, but his hand shot out, catching my wrist. Not painful, but firm, immovable. Sit. Down. And God help me, I did. There was something in his voice, in his eyes, that said he wasn't making a request. Here's what's going to happen, Dante said, releasing my wrist but keeping his gaze locked on mine. You're going to listen to my proposal. If you don't like it, you can walk out that door, and you'll never hear from me again. But I think you'll like it, Emma. I think you'll see it's the answer to every problem currently keeping you up at night. I crossed my arms over my chest, trying to look braver than I felt. I'm listening. Move in with me. Let me provide for you, for the baby. I'll pay all your medical expenses, give you an allowance, make sure you want for nothing. In return, you'll let me be part of this child's life. Let me be the father it deserves. Silence stretched between us. It was the most ridiculous, presumptuous, arrogant proposal I'd ever heard. And yet, why? I asked finally. Why would you want this? Something flickered across his face, something painful and quickly hidden. I had a sister once, Giovanna. She got pregnant at 22, and the father abandoned her just like yours did. She was too proud to ask for help, too scared to come to me. She tried to handle it alone, and his jaw clenched. She died. A complication in childbirth that could have been prevented with better medical care, with less stress, with someone taking care of her. The baby died too. My hand instinctively went to my stomach. Dante, I'm so sorry. I don't want your pity, he cut me off. I want your agreement. Let me do for you what I couldn't do for Giovanna. Let me make sure you and that baby survive and thrive. And if I say no? His smile was sharp. Then you go back to your studio apartment, your minimum wage job, your struggle. And in a few months, when the medical bills start piling up, when you're too pregnant to work, when you're facing eviction, you'll wish you'd said yes. Don't let pride make Giovanna's mistake, Emma. I'm offering you a lifeline. Take it. I hated how right he was. I hated how tempting his offer sounded. But more than that, I hated how something in me was drawn to him, to this dangerous stranger who looked at me like I was precious, like I mattered. I need time to think, I said. You have until dessert, he replied, gesturing to the server who'd been waiting in the corner. Order whatever you want. When the meal is finished, I'll need your answer. The meal passed in a blur of courses I barely tasted, though my traitor stomach growled appreciatively at the first real food I'd had in days. Dante watched me eat with satisfaction, occasionally asking questions about my life, my interests, my dreams from before. He listened like every word mattered, like I mattered, and it was intoxicating. By the time the dessert arrived, a chocolate torte that looked like art, I'd made my decision. Okay, I said quietly. I'll do it, but I have conditions. Dante's eyes gleamed with triumph. Name them. I want my own room. My own space. We're not. I struggled to find the words. This isn't a romantic arrangement, he finished for me. Understood. You'll have the entire west wing of my penthouse. Your privacy will be respected. I want to keep working. I'm not some kept woman. Fine, though I don't see why you'd want to work that job when you don't need the money. But if it makes you feel independent, work until the pregnancy makes it difficult. And when the baby comes, we figure out custody legally, with lawyers and everything official. He paused at that, something dangerous crossing his face. Emma, understand this. Once you enter my world, you don't leave easily. That child will be mine in every way that matters. But yes, we'll make it legal. I always honor my contracts. There was a threat buried in those words, but I was too desperate, too tired, too alone to care. When do we start? I asked. Dante stood, extending his hand to me. Now, I'm taking you home to pack. You'll stay with me starting tonight. Tonight? That's too fast. I need to give notice at my apartment, tell my boss. Already handled. I bought out your lease this morning, and I've arranged for a very generous donation to Fitzgerald's books in exchange for your immediate resignation. Your landlord will box your belongings and deliver them tomorrow. Tonight, you come with me. I stared at him, anger and awe mixing in my chest. You were that certain I'd say yes? No, he said softly, pulling me to my feet, his hand warm and possessive on my lower back. But I was that certain I'd convince you. There's a difference. The car waiting for us outside wasn't just expensive, it was armored. I could tell by the weight of the door, the thickness of the glass. Dante settled beside me in the back seat, his thigh pressing against mine in the confined space, and I felt the heat of him through layers of fabric. "You're not what I expected," I said as the driver pulled into traffic. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Someone older, maybe. Less." I gestured vaguely at him. "Handsome?" he supplied with a slight smile. I was going to say intimidating. "I can be both." The smile faded. "Emma, I need you to understand something before we get to my home. My world is dangerous. I'm not a good man. The things I do, the business I run, it's not legal, it's not safe, and it's not something I can simply walk away from. People fear me for good reason." "What kind of business?" I asked, though part of me already knew. "The kind that requires armored cars and armed guards. The kind that makes wrong numbers feel like fate because I don't believe in coincidences. I believe in leverage. The kind that means once you're under my protection, you're completely under my protection." Do you understand what I'm saying? I understood. I understood I was getting into a car with a criminal, probably Mafia, possibly worse. I understood I should be terrified. But all I felt was a strange sense of relief, like I'd been drowning and finally someone had thrown me a rope, even if that rope was made of razor wire. "I understand," I whispered. "Good." He took my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. "Because I need you to know, I will protect you and that baby with everything I have. But in return, you belong to me now. Not romantically, not sexually unless you want that, but fundamentally. You're mine to keep safe, and I don't share well." His penthouse was everything I expected and nothing I was prepared for. The building required 3 separate security checks just to reach his private elevator, and the space itself was enormous. All marble and leather and floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the city glittering below like fallen stars. "The West Wing," Dante said, guiding me through rooms that seemed to go on forever. He opened double doors to reveal a suite that was larger than my entire apartment had been. A massive bed with silk sheets, a sitting area with a fireplace, a bathroom that looked like a spa, and a closet that was completely empty. "We'll get you clothes tomorrow," he said, noting my gaze. "For tonight, you'll find sleepwear in the dresser. Everything is new, never worn. I had my assistant stock the room when I decided you'd be staying here." "When you decided," I repeated. "That was before I even said yes. I told you, Emma. I always get what I want." He moved closer, backing me toward the bed until my legs hit the mattress. "And I wanted you here. Safe. Mine. I'm not yours," I said, but it sounded weak even to my own ears. "Not yet," he agreed. His hand rose to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "But you will be. Because I don't just keep you safe, Emma. I make you realize that safe is exactly where you want to be." He left me then, alone in that beautiful room, and I sank onto the bed with shaking legs. What had I done? What had I agreed to? But as I lay back against pillows that smelled like expensive fabric softener and felt my baby flutter for the first time, so faint I almost missed it, I thought maybe I'd done the only thing I could. Maybe I'd saved us both. I just had no idea what the cost would be. The next morning, I woke to sunlight streaming through windows I'd forgotten to cover and the smell of coffee that made my stomach roll. The morning sickness hit hard, and I barely made it to the bathroom before I was heaving into the toilet. Cool hands gathered my hair back, and I realized with mortification that Dante was there, kneeling beside me, holding my hair like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm fine," I gasped between waves of nausea. "You don't have to." "Sure," he murmured. "I know I don't have to. I want to." When the sickness finally passed, he handed me a warm washcloth and helped me to my feet. I caught our reflection in the bathroom mirror. Him in another perfect suit, me in the silk pajamas I'd found in the dresser, looking pale and wrecked. We didn't match. We didn't make sense. "There's ginger tea waiting for you in the kitchen," Dante said. "And crackers. They're supposed to help." "How do you know that?" "I had my assistant compile a list of everything you'll need. Prenatal vitamins are on your nightstand, and I've made an appointment with the best obstetrician in the city for next week." I should have been grateful. Instead, I felt overwhelmed, controlled, like I was losing myself in his efficiency. "I can make my own appointments," I said. "But you don't have to anymore. That's the point, Emma. Let me take care of things. I'm not helpless." "No," he agreed, his hand sliding to my lower back in that possessive way he had. "You're strong. Strong enough to accept help. Strong enough to let someone else carry the weight for a while." He guided me to the kitchen, where breakfast was laid out like a magazine spread. fresh fruit, pastries, eggs, and that promised ginger tea. A woman in her 50s stood by the counter, her kind face breaking into a warm smile when she saw me. "Miss Emma, I'm Teresa. I manage Mr. Caruso's household. If you need anything at all, you just tell me." "Thank you," I said, feeling awkward as Dante pulled out a chair for me. "Teresa's husband, Marco, handles security," Dante said, pouring my tea. "You'll see him and his team around. They're here to protect you." "Protect me from what?" Dante exchanged a glance with Teresa, who quietly excused herself. When we were alone, he sat across from me, his expression serious. "From the consequences of being associated with me. I have enemies, Emma. Rivals who would love to find a weakness they could exploit. You and that baby, you're a weakness now." "Then maybe this was a mistake," I said, fear cutting through me. "Maybe I should leave before." "No." The word was hard, final. "You're not leaving. You're safer here, with my protection, than you would be out there alone. At least here, I can control what happens to you." Control. That word again. It should have made me want to run, but instead, I felt that dangerous pull toward him, toward the safety he represented, even if it came with chains. The days blurred together. Dante left for work early each morning, but always made sure I was awake first, always checked that I'd eaten. He came home late, often with blood on his knuckles that he'd wash off in the kitchen sink before seeking me out, like he needed to see for himself that I was still there. We'd sit in his study, him working through papers and phone calls while I read on the leather couch, and it felt almost domestic, almost normal, except for the guns I'd occasionally glimpse under his jacket and the conversations he'd have in rapid Italian that sounded like threats. 2 weeks in, I woke to voices in the hallway, Dante arguing with someone in a language I didn't recognize. "This is madness, Dante," a man's voice said, switching to English. "You can't just adopt some random pregnant girl. She's not random. And I'm not asking your permission, Luca. The families are already talking. They think you've gone soft, that this girl is a distraction. Let them talk. Emma and the baby are off limits. Make sure everyone understands that. And when they test that boundary, because they will test it, Fratello. You know they will. Silence. Then I'll remind them why they fear me." I pressed back against my door, my heart racing. Footsteps approached, and I scrambled back into bed, pretending to sleep. My door opened slightly, and I felt more than saw Dante standing there, watching me. After a long moment, the door closed again. But I couldn't sleep after that. I lay awake thinking about what Luca had said. Some random pregnant girl. A distraction. Was that all I was to Dante? Some project, some replacement for the sister he'd lost? The next morning, I confronted him over breakfast. "Who was here last night?" Dante didn't look up from his newspaper. "My brother, Luca. He sometimes forgets his manners. He called me a distraction." "You are," Dante said, finally meeting my eyes. "You distract me from work, from obligations, from everything that used to matter. But not in the way Luca thinks. You distract me because when I'm in a meeting, I'm thinking about whether you've eaten. When I'm negotiating a deal, I'm wondering if you're comfortable, if you need anything. You've become the axis my world turns on, Emma, and that should terrify you." "Why should it terrify me?" He stood, moving around the table until he was beside me, his hand cupping my face. "Because I'm a possessive man. Because once something is mine, I'll burn the world down before I let it go. And you, sweet Emma, you're very much mine now." "We're not together," I whispered, but my treacherous body leaned into his touch. "Aren't we?" His thumb brushed my lower lip. "You live in my home. You eat at my table. You carry a child I've claimed as my own. You fall asleep on my couch while I work, and I carry you to bed. You're mine in every way that matters. The only question is when you'll stop pretending otherwise. You're arrogant. I'm honest." He leaned down, his lips hovering over mine. "Tell me you don't feel this. Tell me you don't think about me the way I think about you. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll back away. But don't lie, Emma. Not to me and not to yourself." I couldn't tell him that, because it would be a lie. Somewhere between the ginger tea and the late nights in his study, between the protective touches and the way he looked at me like I was something precious, I'd fallen. Not just for the security he provided, but for him. For the man who washed blood from his hands before touching me, who learned what foods didn't trigger my morning sickness, who spoke gently to my belly when he thought I was sleeping. "I can't," I breathed. "Can't what?" "Can't tell you I don't want this." The kiss was inevitable. His lips met mine with a hunger that had been building for weeks, his hand sliding into my hair, angling my head for better access. I melted into him, my hands fisting in his shirt, pulling him closer even though warning bells were ringing in my head. This was dangerous. This was complicated. This was perfect. He pulled back, his breathing ragged, his dark eyes searching mine. Say you're mine. Dante. Say it, Emma. I'm yours, I whispered, and it felt like surrender and victory all at once. Something fierce and triumphant flashed across his face. Good. Because I have something for you. He pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and my heart stopped. It's too soon, I said even as he opened it to reveal a ring. Not a delicate engagement ring, but something bold and beautiful. A ruby surrounded by diamonds that caught the morning light. It's a promise, he said, taking my hand. A promise that I will protect you and this baby. A promise that you're not alone anymore. A promise that when I do ask you to marry me, and I will, Emma, you'll say yes because you already know you belong with me. He slid the ring onto my right hand, and it fit perfectly. Of course it did. Dante planned everything. How did you know my size? I know everything about you. His smile was wicked. I told you I'm thorough. The next few weeks were a haze of domesticity and danger. Dante taught me to shoot, taking me to a private range and standing behind me, his arms bracketing mine, his breath warm on my neck as he murmured instructions. Squeeze, don't pull. There. Perfect. I met Luca officially at a tense family dinner where he'd studied me like a puzzle he couldn't solve. You love him, he'd said bluntly when Dante stepped away to take a call. I barely know him. That's not what I asked. I'd been saved from answering by Dante's return, but Luca's knowing smirk had followed me all evening. My belly grew, and Dante's protectiveness grew with it. He accompanied me to every doctor's appointment, holding my hand during the ultrasounds, his face softening when he heard the heartbeat. Strong, the doctor had said. Very strong. Like their mother, Dante had murmured, kissing my temple. But the danger he'd warned me about wasn't abstract anymore. It came in the form of a black SUV that tried to run us off the road on the way back from a prenatal appointment. Dante's driver reacted instantly, swerving while Marco, sitting in the front passenger seat, leaned out with a gun. Get down! Dante shouted, pushing my head below the window line, his body covering mine as bullets shattered the rear windshield. The armored glass held, but I screamed anyway, my hands instinctively protecting my belly. The attack ended as quickly as it started, our pursuers falling back when more of Dante's vehicles appeared. But the damage was done. I couldn't stop shaking, couldn't stop seeing the bullets hitting the glass inches from where I'd been sitting. Back at the penthouse, Dante peeled me out of my coat with shaking hands, checking me over for injuries, even though I kept telling him I was fine. You're not fine, he said roughly. You could have died. The baby could have. His voice broke, and I saw the fear underneath all that control. But we didn't, I said, taking his face in my hands. We're okay, Dante. We're safe. Because of luck. Because the glass held. But next time. There won't be a next time. You'll make sure of it. I trust you. Something in him cracked at those words. He pulled me against him, his arms like steel bands, his face buried in my neck. I can't lose you, he said so quietly I almost missed it. I can't lose another person He didn't finish the sentence, but I heard what he couldn't say. Another person I love. You won't, I promised. I'm not going anywhere. That night, he didn't leave me alone in my room. He lay beside me on top of the covers, fully dressed, watching me until I fell asleep. And when I woke to nightmares of bullets and blood, he was there, pulling me into his arms, murmuring in Italian until the fear faded. What are you saying? I asked, my fingers tracing patterns on his chest. That you're safe. That I have you. That nothing will ever hurt you again. Teach me, I whispered. Teach me the words. Say Mia, he said softly. You're mine. Say Mia, I repeated, and his arms tightened. Say il mio cuore. You're my heart. I lifted my head to look at him. Am I? From the moment I saw that ultrasound, you were. I just didn't know it yet. The kiss was different this time. Slower, deeper, full of promises we were both afraid to name. His hand slid under my shirt, splaying across my belly where our baby grew, and the possessiveness in the gesture made heat pool low in my spine. Tell me to stop, he breathed against my lips. Don't stop. He didn't. His hands mapped my body with reverent care, learning every curve, every sensitive spot, every place that made me gasp. When he finally moved over me, his weight careful not to press on my belly, his eyes locked on mine. You sure? He asked. I've never been more sure of anything. The joining was slow, perfect, overwhelming. Dante made love to me like I was precious and breakable, his control fraying only at the end when I shattered around him, his name a prayer on my lips. Afterwards, he held me close, his hand never leaving my stomach, and I realized with perfect clarity that I was in love with him. Completely, irrevocably, dangerously in love with the Mafia boss who'd claimed me and my baby as his own. "I love you," I whispered into the darkness. His body went still. Then he rolled to face me, his eyes intense. "Say it again." "I love you, Dante. Even knowing what I am, what I do. Because of what you are. Because you're dangerous enough to keep me safe, powerful enough to protect our family, and gentle enough to hold me like I might break. I love you." He kissed me again, and I tasted desperation in it, relief, triumph. "Marry me," he said. "I thought you said you'd ask when I was ready." "You're ready. And I'm not patient enough to wait anymore. Marry me, Emma. Make it official. Make it permanent." "Yes," I breathed. "Yes, of course, yes." The next morning, he replaced the ruby ring with a diamond that could probably fund a small country. We were married 2 weeks later in a small ceremony with only Luca and Teresa as witnesses. Dante kissed me like he was claiming me in front of God and everyone, and I kissed him back like I was choosing this life with my eyes wide open. Because I was. I'd chosen the danger, the darkness, the man who'd seen my accidental text, and decided I was his to keep. And somehow, in that wrong number, I'd found exactly what I needed. 3 months later, I stood in the nursery Dante had designed, one hand on my swollen belly, the other trailing over the custom crib that had cost more than my entire year's salary at the bookstore. The room was perfect, soft grays and whites, with hand-painted clouds on the ceiling and enough security measures hidden in the walls to protect a head of state. "You're thinking too loud," Dante said from the doorway. He moved behind me, his arms encircling me, his hands covering mine on my stomach. At 7 months pregnant, I was all belly, and our daughter, we'd found out she was a girl at the last ultrasound, kicked constantly against his palms like she already knew her daddy's touch. "I'm thinking about how different my life would be if I'd sent that text to the right number," I admitted. His body tensed. "Regrets?" "Never." I turned in his arms, or tried to. The belly made graceful movements impossible. I was thinking how Marcus would have made me feel like a burden. How I'd be doing this alone, scared, probably still working at that bookstore until I went into labor. How I'd never have known what it felt like to be completely, utterly loved. Something in his expression softened. "You're everything, Emma. You and our daughter. Everything else is just noise." "Even the business?" "Even that." He kissed my forehead. "Speaking of which, I need to tell you something. There's been movement from the Constantine family. They're not happy about the territories I acquired last month." Fear spiked through me. "The same Constantine from that phone call? The one you threatened?" "The same. He's been quiet since I made an example of his lieutenant, but my sources say he's planning something. I'm increasing security. Marco will be with you at all times when I'm not here. Dante, maybe we should leave the city. Go somewhere safe until—" "No." His voice was firm. "Running shows weakness, and weakness gets you killed in my world. We stay. We show strength. And when Constantine makes his move, I'll be ready." But he wasn't ready. None of us were. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in the penthouse with Teresa, folding tiny onesies and trying not to waddle too much when my back ached. Dante was at a meeting downtown, Marco stationed outside the door, 3 other guards on various floors of the building. We should have been safe. The explosion came from below, shaking the entire building. I dropped the onesie I was holding, my hands flying to my belly as Teresa grabbed my arm. "Miss Emma, we need to move." "Now." "What's happening?" "I don't know, but Mr. Caruso has protocols for this. Come with me." She pulled me toward Dante's study, her fingers finding a hidden panel behind his desk. A door swung open, revealing a safe room I'd never known existed. Steel reinforced, stocked with supplies, with monitors showing every angle of the building. On the screens, I watched masked men flooding into the lobby, shooting at Dante's guards. Marco's voice crackled through the security system. "Safe room. Get her to the safe room." "I'm trying," Teresa shouted back, shoving me inside. But before she could follow, the study door burst open. A man I didn't recognize, his face covered except for his eyes, lunged forward. Teresa tried to slam the safe room door, but he was faster, catching it with his boot. "The pregnant one," he said into a radio. "I've got the pregnant one." Terror flooded through me. I backed away, one hand protecting my belly, the other searching desperately for a weapon. My fingers closed around a letter opener on the small desk inside the safe room. Pathetic against a gun, but it was all I had. "Please," I said, hating how my voice shook. "Please don't hurt my baby." "Constantine doesn't want the baby dead," the man said, advancing. "He wants Caruso broken. And taking you will do exactly that." He reached for me, and something in me snapped. I wasn't the scared, desperate girl who'd sent that wrong number anymore. I was Dante's wife. I was a mother protecting her child. I was done being a victim. I drove the letter opener into his reaching hand with all my strength. He screamed, stumbling back, and I slammed the safe room door shut, my fingers shaking as I engaged the locks Dante had shown me during one of his security briefings. The man pounded on the door, shouting threats, but the steel held. On the monitors, I watched more of Dante's men arriving, engaging Constantine's forces. The firefight was brutal. I saw people die, saw blood spray across the marble floors I'd walked across that morning. And then I saw Dante. He moved through the chaos like death itself, his gun firing with precision, his face a mask of cold fury. Men fell before him, and he didn't hesitate, didn't slow, just kept moving toward the elevator that would bring him to me. "Emma," his voice came through the intercom. "Baby, are you safe? Answer me." "I'm here," I gasped, pressing the button with shaking hands. "I'm in the safe room." "Dante, there was a man," he tried. "I know. I saw the monitors." "Is the door locked?" "Yes." "Good. Stay there. Don't open it for anyone but me." "I'm coming." The wait was agony. On the screens, I watched the battle wind down, watched Dante's men systematically eliminate every threat. And then I watched Dante reach my floor, watched him dispatch the injured man who'd tried to take me with a single shot that I turned away from, unable to witness. 3 heavy knocks. "It's me, Tesoro. Open up." I fumbled with the locks, and then Dante was there, pulling me into his arms, his hands running over me frantically, checking for injuries. "The baby," he demanded. "She's fine. Moving like crazy, actually. I think she's mad about being scared." A sound between a laugh and a sob escaped him. "That's my girl. Fierce like her mother." He pulled back, his eyes wild with an emotion I'd never seen before, fear. Raw, unfiltered fear. "When I saw him trying to get to you on the monitors, when I thought I might be too late. You weren't. I'm safe. We're safe. Because of a letter opener," he said, noticing the blood on my hands. Not mine, but the attacker's. "You stabbed him with a letter opener. It was all I had. You're magnificent." He kissed me hard, desperately. "And you're never leaving my sight again. Never. I don't care if you need to use the bathroom. I'll be standing outside the door." "I can't. I won't risk this again." Over the next few days, I learned what Dante's revenge looked like. Constantine's entire operation was dismantled within 48 hours. His assets were seized, his men were either killed or scattered, and Constantine himself. Dante didn't tell me the details, but he came home one night with blood on his clothes and a darkness in his eyes that took hours of holding him to ease. "It's done," he said quietly. "He'll never threaten us again. No one will. You killed him. I did worse than that. I made sure everyone knows what happens when someone targets my family. There won't be another Constantine, Emma. Not while I'm alive." I should have been horrified. The man I loved had just orchestrated the destruction of an entire criminal organization. But all I felt was relief, and maybe that made me as dark as him. "Good," I said and meant it. The next morning, I woke to cramping. At first, I thought it was Braxton Hicks, the practice contractions my doctor had warned me about. But they got stronger, more regular, and when I stood up, my water broke in a dramatic rush that had me gasping. "Dante!" I shouted, gripping the doorframe. "The baby's coming." If I thought Dante was intense before, he became a force of nature in labor mode. He had me in the car within minutes, Marco driving like we were in an action movie, and Dante on the phone with the hospital, threatening medical professionals if they didn't have everything ready. "Sir, she's not due for 2 more months," the poor nurse tried to explain. "I don't care about due dates. My daughter is coming, and you will have the best neonatal team standing by, or I will buy this hospital and fire everyone. Am I clear?" "Dante," I gasped between contractions. "Stop threatening people and hold my hand." He did, his fingers lacing with mine, his face pale beneath his tan. "You're doing great, Tesoro. So strong. So brave. I'm terrified." "I know. Me too. But we've got this. You and me and our girl. We've got this." The labor was fast. Too fast for a first baby, the doctors said, looking concerned. But our daughter was impatient, already fierce, already determined to meet the world on her own terms. 8 hours after my water broke, with Dante coaching me through every contraction, every push, I heard the most beautiful sound in the world. My daughter's cry. She's small, the doctor said, whisking her away to the team of neonatal specialists Dante had insisted be present. But her lungs are strong. Let us check her over. Is she okay? I asked desperately, trying to see through the crowd of medical professionals. Please, I need to know she's okay. Dante's hand tightened on mine. Let them work, baby. They know what they're doing. The minutes stretched like hours. But then a nurse approached with a tiny bundle, and I saw her, our daughter, so small she fit in one hand, but absolutely perfect. Tiny fingers, a shock of dark hair, and eyes that would probably turn as dark as Dante's. 5 pounds, 2 ounces, the nurse said, placing her carefully in my arms. Small, but mighty. She's going to be just fine. I looked down at the miracle in my arms, this tiny person who'd come from a wrong number, and a desperate plea and a dangerous man's unexpected love. Tears streamed down my face as I traced her perfect features. Hi, baby girl, I whispered. I'm your mama. And this is your daddy, who loves you so much he took down an entire criminal empire to keep you safe. Dante leaned over us, his finger gently stroking our daughter's cheek, and I saw tears in his eyes too. She's perfect, he said roughly. Absolutely perfect. What should we name her? We'd discussed names, had lists and debates, but looking at her now, only one felt right. Giovanna, I said softly. After your sister. So she's always with us. The emotion that crossed Dante's face was almost too much to witness. He pressed his forehead to mine, our daughter between us, and his shoulders shook with silent sobs. Thank you, he whispered. Thank you for giving me back what I lost. Thank you for being brave enough to send that wrong number. Thank you for choosing me despite everything. Thank you for this. We chose each other, I corrected. And we're going to choose each other every day for the rest of our lives. Little Giovanna, Gia, we'd call her, chose that moment to yawn, her tiny mouth opening wide, and we both laughed through our tears. 6 weeks later, I stood in front of my mirror, adjusting the dress Dante had commissioned for tonight. Black silk that hugged my post-pregnancy body, elegant and dangerous, exactly like the woman I'd become. The ruby ring still sat on my right hand, but my left now bore the diamond wedding band Dante had added during a private ceremony when Gia was 2 weeks old. You look stunning, Dante said from the doorway, already dressed in his tuxedo. Though I prefer you in nothing at all. Behave, I said but smiled. We have a charity gala to attend. Your legitimate business partners will be there. Legitimate being a generous term, he replied, moving behind me to fasten the diamond necklace he'd given me that morning. But yes, appearances must be maintained. Speaking of which, he pulled out another velvet box, and my heart skipped. Dante, you just gave me the necklace. This is different. He opened it to reveal a stunning diamond bracelet, but it was the engraving inside that made my breath catch. Wrong number, right person. Forever yours. You sentimental man, I teased, even as he fastened it around my wrist. Only for you. He turned me to face him, his hands cupping my face. Emma Caruso, you've given me everything. A family, a reason, a future. I was a monster before you, and you didn't fix me. You just made me want to be a man worthy of you. You are worthy. You always were. You just needed someone to see it. Gia's cry echoed through the penthouse, and we both smiled. Teresa appeared moments later, our daughter in her arms, looking annoyed at being woken from her nap. Someone wants her parents, Teresa said knowingly. Dante took Gia with practiced ease. It had shocked me how naturally fatherhood came to him. He held her against his chest, swaying slightly, and she immediately calmed, her tiny fist gripping his bow tie. You have your mother's timing, he told her seriously, and probably her stubbornness. I'm going to have my hands full when you're older. We both are, I said, joining them, our little family complete in this moment. Looking at them, my dangerous, powerful husband holding our tiny daughter with such infinite gentleness. I thought about that terrified girl who'd sent an ultrasound to the wrong number. She'd been so alone, so desperate, so convinced she'd hit rock bottom. She had no idea she'd actually found her foundation. Ready? Dante asked, handing Gia back to Teresa with clear reluctance. Ready, I confirmed. As we rode down in the elevator, Dante's arm around my waist, I caught our reflection in the mirrored walls. We looked like we belonged, powerful, united, unbreakable. No one would guess that we'd started with a wrong number and a desperate text. No one would know that the man in the tuxedo had killed for me, or that I'd stopped questioning whether I should be horrified by that. This was our truth. Dangerous, complicated, and absolutely perfect. What are you thinking? Dante asked, always so attuned to me. That I'm glad I was crying too hard to see the numbers clearly that night. That I'm glad I chose the wrong contact. Because it led me to exactly the right person. He pulled me closer, pressing a kiss to my temple. There was never a wrong number, Tesoro. It was always fate. It was always supposed to be us. And looking up at him, remembering the journey from that first threatening text to this moment, I couldn't argue. Maybe he was right. Maybe the universe had known what I needed before I did. Maybe sometimes the wrong number is actually the only right choice. The elevator doors opened, and we stepped out into our life, dangerous, beautiful, and entirely ours. Together, we'd face whatever came next. We'd already survived worse. We'd built a family from a mistake and turned a dark romance into a love story that would last forever. And it all started with 3 little words on a screen. Who is this? Best wrong number I ever sent. The end. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you so much for watching. I'm a new channel, and I have so many more dark romance stories like this one waiting for you. Stories about unexpected love, dangerous men, and women who find their strength in the most unlikely places. Please consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell so you never miss a story. Your support means everything to me as I'm just starting out, and it helps me create more content like this for you. Drop a comment below and let me know. What did you think of Emma and Dante's story? Should I do a part 2 showing their life with baby Gia? What kind of romance story would you like to see next? Don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. It really helps the channel grow. Thank you again for being here. I'll see you in the next story. Subscribe for more stories like this. New videos every week.